There's nothing better, is there, than catching on hard pellet. Even though we're not in the height for summer, it changes massively. And being in my local shop, you can tell the difference from coming from winter to summer. Everybody starts picking up pellets. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today in this film, is talking you through one of the biggest things in fishing is hard pellets. So I've brought you to a lovely fishery. It's a fishery I've not been for a long time. It's Alvechurch. And I'm fishing a lake that I've never actually fished, called Arrow. I remember the name of the lake now. I've never actually drawn on this lake when I used to come. But we are catching on hard pellet, even though, let me tell you, it was absolutely bitterly cold this morning. 5-6 degrees. It was probably colder than that in the early hours. But Alvechurch is a typical venue where you can come and learn so much about hard pellet fishing. There's a mixture of fish in here. There's little carp, big carp. That's a small stocky. So you've got to use Alvechurch nets. You've got to use Alvechurch pellets. But wherever you go, obviously the rules are different. That's a typical hard pellet. And you can just get the sun. The sun's starting to come through. And I'm sure we'll be sat here in a hoodie before long. Now, let's talk about the rig before I go back out, and then I'll talk you through what I'm doing. Now, rig-wise, let's start with the elastics. I've got a little cad pot on there. I've opted, because I don't know this lake, I've opted for an 11 jaw. Now, 11 jaw is like your all-rounder. I think it'd be absolutely perfect. Well, it just shows you, really. It was perfect for them little fish. And if you do catch a real big bonus, it's not a problem. I've got a little 4B12 F1 XS. They're awesome little floats because they got a 1.7 bristle. So it's nice to see, especially when you're fishing long like I am. And it's also, it might look like carbon, but that's actually fiberglass. And when Zolt starts filming about what I'm doing with my float, you'll see it all cocks really quickly and follows your bait down. And let me tell you something, during the summer, warmer months, I'll be using these all the time. 015 power line main line. And I've got a nice little shot and power. I'm fishing in about 4.5 foot of water. It's not the deepest part of the lake. It goes up the shelf a bit. It's quite nice, this lake, because you can get sort of variations of depths. But I thought, with it being a bit cold this morning, I'm not going to go right over at 16. I'm just going to fish 14.5 meters in like 4 foot of water. And shotting pattern, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 number 10 shot spaced out. So I've probably got like 3 inches down this end, and as you go up, it gets a little bit smaller. And then I've got 2 little number 12 stots which I can adjust, and I've actually put a little bit of bristle grease already to make the float just stand up. There's like that much float showing, and the bites I've had already are literally like that. The bites that fly under, they're liners. And then I've got an 013 bottom to a 16 GPM. Now I've done that because I don't know what the size of the carp are. I could have probably fished an 11 011 to maybe a 16 SFL, but a GPM is a bit stronger than the SFL, same shape. But I've got one of the new bands on there, which I'll talk you through because they're really, really good. There they are. They come in little packets like that. So they're called hookable bait bands. You get 120 in a little pack like that. They're really cheap, but I'll tell you now, they are so really, really easy to use. Let me just show, let myself can go in on that. They're like a translucent band, which is good because it actually shows the pellet through. And they've got like a little tiny chunk that comes off the side, which you actually hook. You hook your hook through that. And they're grippy on the hook. Let me just put a pellet on. So I've got Fishery 4mm and 6mm pellets. So I'm going to put a 6mm on. This is a small one. They do a medium one as well. Hang on, let me get that. I'll get a new band. I'll show you exactly what it's all about. So you can just pick these bands off, like that. And then what I try and do is hook it quite deeply in the bottom of that chunk.
When your fingers are too big.
Like that. Yeah, I've got sausage fingers. It has actually got a tiny little hole in there, but I'm not really fussed about that. As long as I've got loads of hook going through that little chunk. So the actual band itself, it's got no hook in it. And it makes it sit nice and square every time. If you actually hook a latex band, they fold over where these don't. So let's get a nice little 6mm. I'm trying to pick out the sort of smaller of the 6mm because I'm feeding 4mm at the moment. And hopefully if the fishing gets better, now you can obviously use a pellet bander, or you could use your fingers like I do. I'm lucky I got girly nails. I've got sausage fingers and girly nails. Now you can feel that, how grippy that is. And I normally have it around about that, which to me, when you're fishing hard pellets and you don't want a hair rig, they're brilliant. So let's drop that in. Get some fishery 4mm. I didn't want to soak them because I don't know the pellet. So what I'm doing on the way out, I just drop my pot in so I know everyone's going to sink. I am throwing a few out of my hand down there, top getting free. On the same depth, so there's one rig. There's more important about what I do to try and catch the fish on our pellet, because now, from now on, there'll be a lot of this fishing, whether you're match fishing or whether you're pleasure fishing. So at the time when we started, I'm actually bringing the pot a little bit off the water, spreading those 4mm out. But I've probably put like 20 in, and then put that in like that, and then let that catch up. You can see that float how it cocks. I've got it dotted right down. That probably will come up a little bit because this top, obviously, when the pellet's going down, it takes a little bit of time for the float to catch up the pellet, because you've got to wait the pellet sometimes on the way down. So you can always give that a little lift and drop. It's so important that you, especially this time of year when it's still cold mornings, get your float dotted down, because you see all the little tiny indications. And a lot of the time, the smaller the indication is the actual bite. I go to a lot of venues and your float goes 100 miles an hour. 90% of the time it's actually a liner. So I've got to be quite patient, because this is early spring hard pellet fishing. Look at that. Now if I had a good cameraman with me, he would have probably picked that up.
I did pick that up.
Well done, Zolt. Honestly, it's brilliant. This little fishery as well is absolutely superb. Mark does a lovely job here. So that 11 jura, as you can see, if I had a 13 in there for these size carp, I think it'd just be a little bit too much. And when you're fishing long especially, you need that slightly lighter elastic. It just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm breaking down twice. It's probably a little carp. There's barbel in all sorts in these lakes. Eyed. You don't know what you're going to hook next, which is brilliant. Little carp. Now these can be crafty as well. These are typical hard pellet spring fish. So you've got to use fishery nets as well here at Alvechurch, so you don't even have to bring any keep nets or landing nets. Now that, as you can see, that band's still on the hook, not folded round. Let's get him back. You can see, let me just get Zolt in here now. Now, sometimes if you use the latex band, that would be all folded up, tangled up, but not with these. These are all ready to go again. One thing you need to do, which I haven't got, is a towel. So dry your hands.
You're clearly not prepared.
I was prepared. I'm prepared because I'm catching fish, Zolt. So let's get that back on again. So pull that over like that. And you can see, because it's clear, that sticks out there. Get that nice and centralised, like that. So that hook just, I like it about that. So it just kicks it off on an angle. And then same process, probably like 24 mils, soak them up before you ship out. A few 4 mils on that line. I've started over because of how cold it is. One little tip I would give you, if you're in a match, I would plumbed up 2 lines the same, so 2 long lines and 2 short lines. Especially when you're fishing for F1s, that can be really, really important. I wouldn't necessarily feed them until it went, and then you can start feeding the other line. So let's rattle a few out. I'm not worried about making too much noise at the moment. sometimes it's the worst thing you can do when you're trying to fish on the bottom with pellets. You want to like put them in really stealthily to keep the fish down, but I'm not really worried about that at the moment because it's not loads of bites. I've got to be patient, concentrate, strike at every little indication. Oh, lovely bite that. And sometimes if you do go out match fishing and course pleasure fishing, you might have to wait like possibly up to like 45 minutes to an hour to get them going. I got some maggots with me because I thought you never know. Little indication then. So plumbing up wise, I've plumbed up my normal way. So the body's like an inch out of the water. But with hard pellet fishing, especially when we go into the warmer months, you can actually fish a little bit more on the bottom. If you start getting lots of liners, indications, you can't hook the fish. Look at that, absolutely bang on. Nice little strike. Let him come out of the peg. That's the nice thing with that elastic, you're not bringing them to the surface. Just let the elastic do the work. Onto the roller. I'm breaking down twice because we've got a fence behind us. That's what's so good about them socks as well with your big sections. I used to do a lot of this before people started air rigging pellets. Me hooking a band was always the way forward, and I always go back to it. I don't, actually, you can use them for shallow fishing. I do like air rigging when I'm fishing shallow, but on the bottom, I love hooking a band, and that's what those bands are about. And if I wanted to step up to a 6, well, I'm fishing a 6, the small band will do your 4s and 6s, and then we do a bigger band which will do your 6s and 8s, or even a 10. So while you're doing that, playing that, you can always chuck a few pellets short, priming that line up. And like I said, in a match situation, if I thought hard pellets were going to be the way forward, I would have plumbed up to my left as well. No different to a lot of baits that I fish. With meat and corn, I'll be concentrating on what I'm doing there. But if it starts to go off, then I can prime the other line up, only for like 10 minutes, leave it and go on it. A beautiful fish that. I think Zolt gave me the biggest landing net on the fishery.
Yeah, he blamed me again.
It's a troller net. So that's 2 fish. Look at that. Crafty them things. Let me tell you something, little carp like that, that's where you've got to be aware of it. Putting a 4mm on. The band is ready to go. Again. So deep hook them. Get myself a nice smaller 6mm. There's a few small ones in that pot. Just give that a wiggle so it flattens everything out. Push that up where you want it, and I'm ready to go. Again, go for the same. You can always add, if I wanted to, I could always get a couple of 6mm in with the 4s. But don't forget to do that. Especially if you've got fishery pellets, because if you don't know the pellet, and sometimes if you go to fisheries that do their own pellet, you soak them and they go to mush, and that's one thing you don't want. So I'm not going to risk that today. But I know they're soaked. I know every one of them is going to sink. And again, get out to where you're going to fish. If you want to make a bit of noise like that, and then lift your rig out. And I drop that in so it catches up, but it's not super tight until it gets down near the bottom. Something you need to practice. I do a lot of on my video to try to explain that, and it makes a huge difference, not just with hard pellet fishing, but with all sorts of baits. It doesn't matter what bait you're fishing. I don't know if Zolt caught that then.
Yeah.
Tiny bites.
Even I've seen it.
That means you've got your super glasses on. So I'm fishing with like 2 foot, 18 inches of line, I reckon, between the float and the elastic. Obviously, if I wanted to, I could bring it down, but it's nice when you're fishing long. It's nice to have a little bit more line. Oh, that was a proper bite. Now that one's fighting because the water's still cold. If I'd have had 13 in there, I'd have probably brought that straight to the top. Keep your pole tip down, like that. Great fishing, isn't it, that? So I've got a little bit of Tipex mark on there, so I know that's a section I got to break down. I said, when you're playing that, you can always just chuck a couple of 6mm on that. When the fishing gets better, it might just be a case of just sticking with 4mm. But obviously when it gets warmer, just feeding 6mm might be better. I've got a catty out, just in case, but the water's clearer than what you think. You can see that fish quite a way down. It's a beautiful colour. I love lakes that are that colour. Perfectly up, look. You can see that band.
Bad angling.
Bad netting. See that pellet, look, smacking his top lip. Pellet's still in on that one. Look at that. Don't get better than that, does it? Having that, I think just having that band round that hook shank, because I think it's really important. Let's go through it again, because look at that now. I've just taken that pellet off. The band is perfect. It's not twisted. I can get another pellet straight on there. So, stretch him round. Get him centralised as much as possible. Then push that up. That's still really grippy. Ready to go. Everything's working really well. So let's put sort of 15 fours, a couple of 3 6s. It's nice to get into a little rhythm. A few fours on that short line. And if I was in a match, I'd only be feeding that one short line. Same as that line over there, but I'd have another line ready to go just in case it died off. Sometimes in a match situation, you might have to go between the 4 lines as you get later in the day, or the mid-match sometimes. And then later on, when the fish get feeding heavily, you can just keep going on one line again. But as you can probably tell, because I'm fishing long, I don't really want 2 lines on angles. I want to be able to fish in front of me because it's a lot easier. And I am fishing on a slope. So just hold your float like that. And concentrate. I could probably do with just a little bit more float grease on there. Just to bring them up a little bit. And if things got tough, I'd start catapulting a bit as well. Little liner then. Lovely, isn't it? Absolutely mint. Let's bring it back a couple of sections. Try and get them away from where you're feeding. And like I've always said, get your roller set up. It's quite high today. I've got that set up really high to try and keep, because I'm sat up quite high as well. That's why we make the extension legs and all that. They are there for a reason. Keep your tip nice and low. They're not fighting as hard as what you think because the water is cold. Every night this week, it's been single figures. And it wouldn't surprise me if there was nearly a frost this morning. but they are starting to eat hard pellets. They always eat hard pellets anyway, but you can't always catch on them, which is weird. It's like when you go soft pellet fishing. Some days soft pellet's really good over like micros and fours, but then all of a sudden the fish seem to change. You can catch them on hard pellets, and that's what's happening today. I reckon that one is hooked. Look at that.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10, thank you, Zolt. It's normally 9. So I've stepped up to a 10, haven't I? So again, let's go through it again. Let's just show you how good these hookable bands are. 6mm. So you need dry hands really when you're doing this. Always have a towel normally. So get that wrapped around there. There you go. So what's that? 3 or 4 fish on the same band. Perfect. I love them bands because they're grippy on the hook. But don't forget to hook them quite deep. Before we finish this little film, I'll show exactly how to hook them, because you want to hook them deep in that little chunk. So again, get your sections together. Stop there where it's balanced. Feed that short line. Keep shipping over. See so many people just not quite, and it's not hard work, you know what I mean? Just got to think about it a bit more. So rattle them out so it comes over a little bit of an area. And if the wind turns, if the wind's blowing, well, it's not really a wind, it's a breeze, let it go in that way round. So that line acts like a kite, like that. Let me do that again. So if you do it that way round, you can actually see my line is acting like a bow and like a kite. So you don't move the float. It's like the perfect presentation. You've got to be switched on doing this. You've got to be on it. It's like if you look away and you like someone will have your bait and you'll miss it. That's what Zolt does a lot of the time. He's always looking at other people. Good bite, missed that. You always miss some bites on hard pellets. And you see that how that float is so nice because of that fiberglass bristle stem. It settles and follows your bait down. That's why we sort of designed those floats, slightly thicker bristle, fiberglass stem. The way the fishing is at the moment, you could quite easily use like a little bulk, but a lot of hard pellet fishing for me, especially probably on lakes with bigger fish in, you can catch a lot of fish just as it settles and on the drop. You make your own bit of luck with that, and that's why I like those strung out rigs. So little liner then, look. Try not to strike it then. Another little liner. It's a bit different in the match when you're under pressure. You end up striking it. Yeah, look at that, the proper bite. In a match, you end up striking at everything because you're under pressure. That's what I've got to try and train Zolt up. Oh, that one's come off. That's the first one I've lost. Well, that's the only one I've lost, Zolt. See if we can get one more. So let's just check that pellet. Now that's moved down just a bit. It's not in the perfect position where I want it. Move it back up now. I'm not going to feed now, because this is where you've got to be a little bit careful. And I know we're negative, but a lot of hard pellet fishing on the pole, on the bottom, what we're doing is quite negative. So see if we can get one without. The whole point of this is to not start foul looking. And we all know it's difficult some days. Look at that, that is absolutely lovely, the presentation of that. Like I said, probably could do a little bit of more float showing, because I am fishing long. But I want to do it just to show you guys, and you've probably seen it on lots of videos, that the bites are like that. Now, believe it or not, that's foul hooked. So I probably made the right choice but not feeding, but I've still foul hooked him. That comes with the territory when you are pellet fishing. Yep, he's come off. So what have we got to say about that?
Nobody.
I'm going to put a fresh pellet on. Now I've got a 6mm on. Let's go back to a 4mm. So I'm going to get one of the bigger 4mm, which looked crazy, doesn't it? When you put like a 4mm in a band, then you've got a 16 hook like that. It's mad. Sometimes I'll drop down to an 18. Right, let's see if we can get one more, see if that makes any difference. And then I'm going to get Zolt on here to show me exactly how it's all done. Probably not. Let's go back out. Let's feed a bit this time. Keep it down this time. Try and make it no noise. Put me rigged in that. That wind's just turned, so I'll put the rig in the other way. You can see that arc in the line. And if I started getting more and more indications, more foul hookers, I try and cut out the 4mm and see if I can still carry on catching on 6mm. You never know from one day to the next. A lot of F1 fishing is about 4mm or feeding micros with a 4mm. Yeah, look at that. Oh, hello. That was on a 4mm. Mark said there was some good fish in here.
That looks like big.
That's catfish, I think, Zolt. That's a good one, isn't it? I wasn't expecting that. Oh. Oh. He feels like I did when I got out of bed this morning, got the hump. He's going for the far bank. Right, let me just keep this low. Try and keep your pole tip low, because if they do come off, you don't wreck your rig so much. This thing is not at all happy with that. Be a lovely fish to finish off with,
Like
though.
you, like in the morning.
Yeah, got the hump.
When you get here.
Oh, I was happy to come here. It's nice to go back to somewhere where I've fished before. North versus south. First day, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
They beat us, me and Andy Powers, and then we took them out on Riddins. Could be the end of that. Don't think that went down very well. Get out of there. Right, he's on his way back now.
That looks like a proper fish.
I think so. Don't think it's massive. See how much elastic you can see down in that water. It's quite clear. I reckon you can see, if you chuck some white maggots in there, I reckon you can see 18 inches 2 foot down, which is quite clear really. But if the fish are feeding, it can be even better. See, that was on a 4mm, it's mad. I go to a lot of venues now where 4mm are so good. Always have a few 18s tied up, because 18s sometimes are better. No, he's not that big. Nice fish though, strong fish. Colin the common, typical, angry as hell. I reckon I might have been a common carp when I was born. Probably about a 15-pounder. I love this. This is great fishing. That elastic, you couldn't get a better elastic if you tried. Yes. Nice. What a beautiful fish to finish this little video off. Now what's happened there is that's actually blown the band and the pellet up the line. So what I'll have to do is I'm going to hold him up for result. Thank you, Alvechurch. Thank you, Mark, for letting us fish this great lake, Arrow Lake. There's loads of pleasure anglers on here today. I'm going to carry on.
Now it's my turn.
Now it's your turn, Zolt. And all you would have to do with that is feed, let the pellet out. That's it. And then feed the spade back through like that. And you're ready to go again. Absolutely brilliant. One band, catch a fish, a chuck. But let me just show you, before we finish, I'm going to show you with a fresh band on the best way of doing it, because it's going to be really important. And then me and Zolt are going to say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the Preston YouTube channel. So
You have a nightmare fingers.
I have got sausage fingers. Now you can see that. I don't know if Result can get onto that. Hook it quite deep in that nice big chunky bit of rubber. Like that. Ready to go. So thanks for watching, and see you next time on the next video.